Hello, everybody, and good morning from San Francisco. I believe most of our participants are in Europe at the moment, so then good afternoon to everybody. The topic of today is basically finance stack and how to build a great finance stack and what are the elements of that as well. We're getting tons of questions all the time from lots of SaaS companies and digital businesses. We've been interviewing about 400, 500 different digital businesses over the last 12 months. And then we've noticed that the same questions come up all the time, and startup companies all over the world are struggling with pretty much the same things. So then we created this presentation basically to summarize a lot of those questions that concern the finance stack and the finance applications that startup companies are using, basically to put it all together and then give that information available or make it available for startup companies. So let's start with basics, like what is the finance stack? So a lot of people know about marketing stacks and tech stacks and so on, but a finance stack is a set of tools that the company uses to run their finances and accounting on a daily basis. So whichever tools you're using for your billing system or payments, accounting, payroll, investor reporting, etc., all these tools make up your finance stack. That's the finance stack simplified, basically. Let's go to the next slide here. And a couple of points, like why does finance stack matter? Why should you build a great finance stack? So basically, financial reporting and accounting historically has been super manual, and there's been a lot of manual work, and therefore there's been a lot of errors as well. So the idea of a modern finance stack is that you avoid that manual work, therefore you reduce errors. And because now there's all these possibilities of data analytics and open APIs and so on, it's better if you put all your financial data in one place to create a single source of truth, so that you can actually get some insights out of your data. You can combine your expenses with your income, create profitability reporting, and just find the best KPIs for your company's use, so you can make a profitable business. And this way, you can basically build a solid forecasting foundation for the business, so you know how to do your pricing, how to do cash flow forecasting, etc. And by doing all this, you're saving a lot of time, so that you can actually concentrate on your core product, like building a great software, building a great company, and then reduce stress, worrying about financial reporting. That nobody should be worrying about financial reporting, basically. And when you've created these insights and when you've set your financial reporting on autopilot, and you've thought about your pricing, you thought about your sales channels, etc., and you kind of build the solid financial forecasting, or that it's much easier to convince investors as well, and you can get a higher valuation, you can get more money, because they then believe you that you can basically run a profitable business and grow a profitable business, and you use that money wisely. And as I mentioned, we're getting tons of questions all the time from all over the world, and these are some of the questions that we hear the most often, basically. So we will answer these questions, and during the 2 QA sessions, then you're able to answer basically anything you have in mind. So usually people start with, okay, how should I bill my customers? Should I use my accounting software? Should I use a subscription management software? And how do I get my subscription data into one place? What's the best accounting software for me? What's the best payroll software? And all in all, like, how do I connect all these tools together? Like, how do I reduce that manual work that is required to get the data from one software to another? Then the second part of the questions, usually it's about traditional banks and neobanks, like which one should I use? How should I issue credit cards? And specifically, like, how do I calculate my key industry metrics? Like, if I'm an e-commerce company, where do I get that data? how do I calculate it? I'm a SaaS company. How do I calculate SaaS metrics, etc.? And then because Calqulate is a financial reporting tool, we get a lot of questions that like, what is the best tool to do financial reporting and cash flow forecasting for my own business? So these are some of the questions that we'll go through here. This is the old finance stack illustrated, and this is where most companies still are. Mostly, at least, they might have improved some of the items. But you see on the top bar, there's the different apps of normally what are in the finance stack. So subscription management tool, payment tool, payroll, accounting, and expense management software. And in the old finance stack, these different applications don't really connect. They don't talk to one another. Information is not moved automatically from one place to another, and there's a lot of manual entry in between them. And traditionally, Excel has been used for financial reporting. So basically putting your SaaS metrics together, putting your profit and loss and balance sheet together, do some simple business analytics, and then basically reporting that to your investors and board members with a massive Excel file. I think we've all done this in the past, and basically the modern stack basically then automates all that. Actually, Myles, can you go back one step? I'll give one example about the Excel file hassle here. I think my personal record is an Excel file of 200 tabs. I tried to kind of merge everything in here with lots of scenarios and cash flow forecasting, and so on for a large SaaS company. I think I basically broke the capacities of Excel because it was so large and nobody else was able to update it because I was the kind of mastermind of that Excel file. And then the capacity just basically broke because I had too many rows of data and too many formulas over there. So this is my life for the last 10 years, basically building those Excel files, and we wanted to get rid of that. So let's take a look at what the modern CFO stack looks like in theory, and then after that we look at it in practice. So basically, you have the same element here. You have all the apps from subscription management to accounting, expense management, and so on. But they actually connect. They're interconnected tools, and information flows automatically from expense management tool to accounting tool, and say from payroll software to accounting tool. Subscription management and payment gateway are automatically connected, etc. So basically, information moves basically across the whole finance stack, which is great. You avoid a lot of manual work like that. And then, as part of the modern the CFO stack, there's the analytics software that basically replaces Excel and does everything from metrics to financials to cash flow forecasting and investor reporting, that everybody are using the same tool. It becomes a single source of truth, and then you send out all the reports basically from there. This is a new part in the modern CFO stack. And let's look at this, what it looks in practice when we put some application names here in the different boxes. This is not an ad. We love using these tools. We use these in our own operations as well. So Stripe, for example, this is a commonly used subscription management tool, which also has a payment gateway. Gusto is used for payroll, especially in the English-speaking market. Revolut is a great expense management tool, and Neobank, where you can issue virtual credit cards, for example. And QuickBooks is often used for accounting, for example. And all these tools basically are interconnected, and they're connected to, in this case, Calqulate, which is the other financial analytics tool. So this kind of combination is what we see quite often. The payroll software being the country-specific item usually in the mix, but we'll cover that a little bit later on. All right, so we have 6 topics that we want to talk about here specifically, and it basically usually starts with sales, like how does a company sell their services, that relates to the second point, which is billing versus subscription management. Like, how do you organize that? And where do you get your SaaS metrics data from? Then we move on to accounting, like what's the best accounting software? How should it be connected to different tools? After this, we'll have the Q&A session of about 5 minutes. So you can think about questions that relate to the 3 first topics. After the Q&A, we'll move to talking about payroll system, then expenses, and then lastly, financial analytics, basically. So let's move to the next slide here. There's a couple of key concepts that I would like everybody to keep in mind throughout the presentation. Basically, 3 things. Connectivity. That's the most important thing in your finance stack. All your tools need to be interconnected. So if you want to choose a simple tool, which is like a regional tool, for example, in your country, just make sure that it's connected to the other apps in your software. It can be a simple tool. It can do one thing really well, as long as it's connected to your, other parts of your stack. That's fine. But if you have a great tool and it does all sorts of things and it's not connected to any other application in your finance stack, you're losing a lot of benefit in that. So I would really emphasize connectivity here, which leads to automation, because if it's interconnected, you're basically reducing a lot of manual work and you're reducing errors as well. And if it's connected, you basically get a detailed insight to what that source can bring you, and you can connect that data to other parts of the finance stack as well. Complexity is one key topic. It's better to choose industry-specific tools. If you're a SaaS company, try to choose SaaS-specific tools. And then, especially with accounting software and payroll software, choose tools that do only one thing really well. Like accounting software only needs to do one thing, accounting, nothing else. Payroll software is the same thing. It only needs to do payroll, nothing else. Don't try to take other add-ons and so on for payroll software. Just choose specific tools to do that. So let's start with the key concept of like, how do you sell your services? Because this really kind of decides the direction of your finance stack, and this is good to understand and talk a little bit about this. So we come across usually 2 different types of companies that either they are self-serve companies that have a high volume of transactions, and basically they charge their customers online with the credit card, and it's often monthly recurring payments. So basically high amount of transactions, and maybe hundreds of thousands of customers and hundreds of thousands of transactions. So really have to focus on analytics here and the integration between your payment gateway and subscription management software and accounting software. These are really the key concepts here. The other end of the spectrum is inside sales, or somebody calls it like enterprise SaaS. So basically, usually there are not that many customers, and you need sales insights for your operations, and therefore your CRM system is key here. So often then in this case, the invoices to customers are sent via PDF. They might be generated from the accounting software, etc. But then there's the problem that, okay, where do I get my subscription data from? And in this case, also a lot of the invoices would be 12 months upfront and not recurring on a monthly basis, basically. So these are 2 key concepts to kind of start the finance stack. And then, for example, there are lots of hybrid companies that do both. They have a self-serve model, and then they have an inside sales or an offline billing model as well. So they do both, basically, but they need to find a way to consolidate all that data together. So this is basically kind of, this sales leads to the second point, which is subscription management versus billing. And most SaaS companies are kind of struggling with this. they would like to send their invoices from the accounting software, some other tool, but then they realize quite quickly that I'm not actually getting or generating my subscription data from anywhere, and then I don't really have SaaS metrics. So that's a bit of a problem. So let's look at the different options here. So ideally, you just want to automate your billing, you want to automate your payments process, and there's a lot of ways to do that. But then because this part generates so much good data for the financial reporting of SaaS companies, you need to kind of think through the whole process, not just the billing and payments part, but also how can this be used for generating SaaS metrics. We'll talk about that a little bit more later on. But a lot of B2C companies would be self-serve companies. They need a really good payment gateway. They need a really good subscription management tool, and they get money in through online payments. B2B companies are often on the other side of the spectrum. So they would have lots of salespeople using CRM systems and sending custom contracts to their customers. They would either be sending from the CRM system directly, or accounting system, or in some cases a subscription management tool. And the customers would pay with wire transfers here. So we call them offline invoices, offline payments. And here you really need to think about how to organize subscription management. And hybrid solution is that, okay, you have lots of sources and you need to consolidate everything in one place to get a big picture. So then the more sources you have of billing and payments, the more you have to think about consolidation and data aggregation and getting a full view of your operations. If you go to the next slide here, we have a couple of practical examples about this part here. So if we talk about subscription management, so usually people then start using a subscription management software, such as Stripe or Chargebee, Recurly. These are all great options. We've used them for the last couple of years with a number of customers, and they work really well. And the purpose of this, the subscription management tool, is that it collects all your subscription data in one place. It has your customer catalog. It has the start dates and end dates for your subscription. It has all the data for your MRR, churn, upgrades, downgrades. You send out sales invoices from there. You basically, you book all your payments there, whether they're online or offline payments there. And this really kind of offers the foundation for SaaS metrics and financial reporting for a SaaS company. Like if you don't have this data, all the actions that you want to do or kind of outputs you want to do in your financial reporting don't work here. You need to get this one straight and working so that you can do other parts of your financial reporting. So it's really important to concentrate on this part. Often, if you choose a really good subscription management tool like Chargebee, for example, you need to think about then the payment gateway, like how do you collect that money from your customers. So Stripe is a commonly used payment gateway that creates the user interface for customers to type in that credit card, and they process the payment, and then you get the money afterwards. So Chargebee and Stripe, or Recurly and Stripe, are classic combinations for subscription management and payment gateway. You can use Stripe as well. It has a pretty good subscription management module, and it works as a payment gateway if you want to put everything in the same place. All right, let's move on. So then the other side of the angle is billing management and accounts receivable. If you send out invoices from your accounting software, but if you're the enterprise SaaS company, for example, inside sales companies, you would send these custom invoices from a billing software and accounting software. So here, basically, you don't generate subscription data. You're not looking at MRR, basically, particularly, and then you don't get churn information automatically. You're just sending a PDF invoice to your customer, say 20,000 euros, and then the customer pays, and you see, in your accounts receivable which invoices are open and not. it works for billing and payments, which is great. It's super easy and it connects to your accounting software, super easy, but you're missing the subscription data here. We call these like stupid PDF invoices without subscription data. You have to think about how do you add the element of subscription data here so that you can actually then do your SaaS metrics as well. But it's great for customers. For example, if they don't want to pay usually 20,000 euros with a credit card, they usually want to pay that with the wire transfer. So these are some elements that you need to keep in mind. So we've listed some commonly used accounting software here that we've used and are great, like QuickBooks and Xero in the English-speaking market, Exact, for example, in Holland, ProCounter in the Nordic countries. These are all great modern tools that you can use for your billing. Or you can think about a combination of doing a hybrid solution. So organizing your subscription management, for example, in Chargebee, and then doing some billing from QuickBooks, for example. That's completely, a really good solution as well. All right, let's go move on. So we talked about accounting a little bit now. We've mentioned names like QuickBooks and Xero, etc. And we've talked about connectivity. So this is basically accounting software is the core. It's kind of like the foundation of your finance stack. Like it needs to be connected to every single tool, preferably that you're using in your finance stack, so that you can do the regular routine daily work of producing a profit and loss, etc. automatically. So if you get your payroll data automatically to your accounting software, your accountant does not need to manually input data, etc. And if you get all your sales invoices from Stripe or Chargebee, again, you don't need to manually input those. So the more you can feed data into your accounting software and get out of your accounting software, the better. Just emphasize connectivity here. So in my opinion, the only purpose of the accounting software is to create a profit and loss and balance sheet efficiently. You don't need to think about any other functions for the accounting software. So just think about how to automate this part. Don't start adding payroll and time management and whatnot. You'll find better tools for that, and then you can just connect them, integrate them to the accounting software here. So that's the key thing. And if you're sending out invoices from your accounting software, you need to think how basically you do your SaaS metrics and how do you get that data from there. Let's talk about payroll system here. Startup companies basically start thinking about this when they pay their first salaries, and then often it's a rushed decision, and then it's a little bit difficult to change after that. So again, here I would emphasize that your payroll system needs to be connected to your accounting system and to your financial analytics system. Otherwise, you don't get enough data out of the payroll system. And the payroll system is a really good example that it needs to do one thing only. It only needs to calculate your payroll and then do some reporting to the government. It doesn't need to do any time tracking or holiday entitlements or anything like that. There are far better tools for that you can then start using. An HR management system that does it like super well, but then the HR management system needs to be connected to your payroll system to avoid manual work. Payroll system is unfortunately the most fragmented part of your finance stack. So if you're thinking about an international structure like us at Calqulate, we have 3 different country offices. Most likely you'll end up using a different payroll system for all your different countries. Unfortunately, it's really difficult to consolidate these, and then that's why this is the most difficult part for connectivity as well if you have a centralized accounting system here. But it's one of the key concepts as well, because then your staff expenses are the biggest contributor to your overall expenditure and the biggest contributor to your customer acquisition costs, because startup companies, digital businesses are always looking for new customers, and it's most of that is done by salespeople or marketing people that then generate customer acquisition costs that you need to take into account into your SaaS metrics, basically. So we've listed here a couple of options for good payroll software options. So Gusto and Rippling are really good options if you're in the States. And then Payfit, Pento if you're in the UK or France, and QuickBooks works in a couple of different markets. All of these tools are really well connected in the finance stack. Payfit a little bit less, but they're also building integrations to other software here. So then connectivity is key again over here. Let's go to the next slide. And then expense management software and neobanks here. We've used a couple of different expense management software like Brex and Revolut. We started using them because we needed to issue basically virtual credit cards for our employees to pay, the little lunch expenses that they have, subscribe to different SaaS tools, etc. So they have this, really good functionality of scanning receipts and categorizing them, and then they connect to the accounting software, and you have, all your data and electronical format, and then you basically give an easy tool for your employees to spend some petty cash. They also offer really good functionality, basically to open a bank account as well. So lots of startups have chosen to actually use a neobank for their daily operations, to pay their salaries, to get money from their customers from online payments to the neobank, and so on, because it's better suitable for a startup, a digitally operating company. Just an example, for example, I've opened bank accounts for several companies in different countries. Often startup companies are not interesting customers for banks. They're like, well, you don't have any money, you don't have any operations, why should we care about you? That's the kind of attitude from banks, and they definitely won't want to give you any loan. So forget about that. If you don't have like millions of euros in your bank account already. So then neobanks are usually better options for startups because they have a beautiful interface. You can open a bank account really quickly. You can issue virtual credit cards in seconds. And if you use a traditional bank, opening a bank account might take 2 weeks. You need to go to the bank, write bunches of documents. It takes 3 weeks to get a credit card, and so on. There's just so many delays. So I would suggest using a neobank, and then you have this expense management functionality that comes with that, which is great. And then as long as this part is connected to your accounting software, to collect the bank balances and those categorized expenses, you can automate a lot of things in your finance stack. And there's only a few requirements that you want to look into here. Like, okay, you need to have a bank account. You need to be able to move money from one currency to the other. You need to be able to pay, make some payments or pay your staff and contractors. And virtual credit card issuance is really practical. So I would definitely emphasize that. And then the tracking and categorization of expenses, super useful to automate your work. And let's go to the next slide over here. Then financial analytics tool. So basically the idea of the financial analytics tool that it is your single source of truth for all your financial data, and then it connects and aggregates, consolidates that data together so that you can get, for example, profitability analysis when you're looking at the expenses and income from the same item. And then you can basically easily calculate growth metrics, revenue metrics for your operations, and do forecasting. The forecasting part is super interesting for startups because startups are always looking for growth and thinking about how to change their pricing, how to basically get more funding, etc. So there always needs to be a forward-looking view. Basically, calculating customer acquisition cost is super important for startups, and compare it to lifetime value calculation, so you get a complete view for your revenue and expenses, and cohort and segment. analysis is also really good when you have a little bit more transactions and you want to group your customers in different ways and then compare those customer groups and how quickly a certain group grows and so on. And basically sales and cash flow forecasting, super important. And this is usually the place where you would send out your board reporting and investor reporting as well, or you give access to your investors and board to use the same software. So you're saving a lot of time because investor reporting can take hours every month. You basically want to automate all that. So let's look at a couple of practical examples in this space. We've done a lot of competitor analysis. We know the pros and cons of our competitors, of us. We have a really direct view about this. Nobody's perfect. Lots of companies are evolving really quickly. Baremetrics, let's start with that. Baremetrics is a great tool for revenue analytics for SaaS companies. It has a really beautiful interface. I love using it. It has lots of integrations. It does a little bit of forecasting for MRR, but it doesn't have expense analytics or financial reporting. Like you don't get your profit and loss, you don't get your CAC, and it doesn't do cash flow forecasting here. But if you want to use it for revenue analytics, it's really good. ChartMogul is quite the same. ChartMogul does subscription analytics as a whole. Basically, you can enrich that data with a lot of data from your CRM software through CSV imports, and you get a really detailed view to your revenue analytics. But like Baremetrics, it doesn't have the expense part or financial reporting part, and it doesn't really do any forecasting per se. Again, really good tool for revenue analytics, but the interface is less intuitive compared to Baremetrics, in my opinion. Profitwell, it does some of the things that Baremetrics and ChartMogul does, but it also does some additional things like churn prediction, which is really cool, for example, and it has a pretty good user interface and lots of integrations. And it's also, for certain elements, it's free. There's a lot of paid options, but some elements are free. But again, it doesn't have expense analytics and financial reporting. And then lastly here's Calqulate. So Calqulate is, when it comes to revenue analytics, it's very similar to Baremetrics, for example, and it has a good number of integrations. Calqulate works with, basically, Calqulate has an integration to QuickBooks and Xero, etc., to produce that subscription data from the offline billing data. So you get a complete view for in the hybrid situations or SaaS, enterprise SaaS situations. You get a complete view for your SaaS metrics. And Calqulate also has the connection to QuickBooks and so on to build expense analytics and financial reporting and cash flow forecasting. So basically, this is an industry-specific single source of truth, as opposed to a industry-specific niche tool, for example, what Baremetrics is. All of these are great tools. They just have a little bit different focus to the financial analytics part.